Oh, welcome to another edition of Shrewsbury SRT. I am your host, Chris Kirk, and with me is my guest, Mr. John Lukach. And we are taping today on May 9th. And gee, isn't it nice that spring has finally arrived? I was concerned for a time that we were entering a new ice age. I mean, I think we had like about 5 snowfalls in April. I mean, I just thought it would never end. Anyway, so that's the music in the intro. Finally, spring has arrived, hurrah! Okay, we have a full plate today. Basically, we're going to be talking mostly about town meeting stuff, including some warrant articles that are going to be on the annual May town meeting, and the date of that is?
May 21st.
May 21st, okay, just wanted to check. But first, I just want to grumble, and that is that, at the special town meeting that was held on whether to allow retail marijuana stores in town, I am, along with a number of other people, a little peeved at how that went because, frankly, I think that the town government connived to subvert the will of the majority. I mean, in town, 55 to 45 people voted to not allow retail marijuana stores in town, and basically I think the article was rigged so that the town government would get its way, which is not what the majority wanted. And I said beforehand that that would happen, and I also said that this is proof that when they have to choose between your kids and getting more money, your kids take second place.
Why don't you explain why you think it was rigged?
Because basically what they did is they attached a zoning change to the simple vote of whether you wanted the retail marijuana stores. If you had had a straight vote on the marijuana stores, only it would have been required only a simple majority, but by attaching zoning changes, suddenly it required a 2/3 majority, and since the ban had been upheld in the statewide vote by 55 to 45, they figured that the people who were against retail marijuana stores wouldn't have the numbers to get a 2/3 vote. And so I think that that is what they were thinking.
Well, in fact, a town meeting, it failed by, the ban got a majority vote, but it failed to get the 2/3 vote.
Yeah.
So town meeting was sort of along the same percentage voting as the town did in the statewide election.
Yeah.
However, as I said to you, Chris, before we got here, is I'm not so sure that they could split the two items up. It's based on what I had heard at the meetings before the town meeting. Sounded to me like they had looked into that and they felt they couldn't split it. You think otherwise? Without getting, whether this new marijuana commission or whatever, or talking to some, high-powered legal folks, I'm not sure what the answer is.
Mm-hmm. No, if they're going to basically connive to subvert the will of majority, I would recommend that you start thinking seriously about voting out the incumbents, because Massachusetts has been a very corrupt state for a long time. We see that on the state level. For example, in 1998, there was a statewide referendum basically to link legislators' pay to the median household income of residents in Massachusetts. And in February 2017, the state legislature connived to circumvent that. by tying raises for themselves to raises for judges. So we got a corrupt state legislature, and I think that I wouldn't call this corrupt, but I would say that their attitude is that the government belongs to them and not to you. You should basically pay your taxes, shut up, and go away because you're not competent to run this government, and they don't want your input. And if they want more money for themselves and they have to sell out your kids to get it, they'll do it. So the way to defend yourself in these circumstances is to start voting out the incumbents, I think. I think, once a few of them go down, the rest will get the message, namely that you're in charge and not them. Anyway, with that, we will proceed from scolding the town government to the articles on the upcoming.
Well, we're going to talk about the petition articles.
Yeah, specifically the petition articles. There are four of them. Yep. And so we'll start off with Article 13, which concerns water rates, which was submitted by a certain person in this room, not me.
I brought it forward. I brought it forward in the past, and I know when I get to town meeting, I'm going to hear a lot of groans from town meeting members saying, why are we bringing this up? We already decided the issue. Well, in my view, the issue was never thoroughly discussed, and there's a lot more information. First of all, we now have new water rates that the selectmen, I believe, finally approved the final numbers on just last night. There may have been some minor changes. And not only that, I should let people know, if they did not catch the brief mention of it in one of the selectmen's meeting, that next year they intend to switch over to monthly billing, which will mean they'll have to develop brand new rates all over again. So there's a lot of rate changes going on, and so now is a great time to actually take a close look at how those rate changes are developed. And like they say about, you don't want to see how sausage is made. Well, you ought to take a look at how rate setting is made. It's not much better. It was very poorly managed. It took them 8 months to develop rates. They came up with an initial set of rates last November based on a outside consultant's recommendation. They were going to go ahead with them, and then when I told them to take a look at a few things and how poorly those rates would work for a lot of people, they decided to delay those rates. And if people who don't believe that should go to the November 14th Selectmen's meeting, where they basically all agreed that they were going to implement those rates just as soon as they could hold a public hearing on them. So anyway, so what's wrong? What else is wrong with those with the new rates? Well, they're even more inequitable and unfair than the current rates. These rates will penalize larger residential households of more than 25,000 gallons. And if you don't think a family of 6, 7, and 8 people doesn't need more than 25,000 gallons, you're mistaken.
25,000 gallons
per quarter. Per quarter. Okay.
Okay.
They penalize small commercial customers in the 5,000 gallon range, and all while continuing to subsidize the largest commercial customers. Shrewsbury continues to have the only known rate structure in Massachusetts where residential rates are higher than its commercial rates at every consumption level above 5,000 gallons. The only ones. Why? Why are we so unusual that we have to be that different? No reason. The task of, and they say it's complicated, and that town meeting, my article would say basically that town meeting should, once the selectmen approve, come up with new rates, town meeting should approve them, take a look at them, and discuss them, and decide whether those are the most equitable for the majority of people. Yeah. So they say it's too complicated for town meeting to understand. It's not complicated at all. They have to figure out how much, the town has to figure out how much revenues are needed to support the water system. Great. The town, they need to figure out what the appropriate fees and other charges should be for connections and for fire protection and for base charges and things like that. But the rates themselves are easy. Once you figure out what the revenue needs are, and figure out what the other fees are going to generate. Now you have a number that you have to generate from rates. So basically, that's an easy process. You just put together a spreadsheet, and you plug the consumptions in, and you say, here's how much we need to make, and now you just start playing with the different rates until you come up with a number that says, oh, we've met the rates. And you can generate dozens of those rates, in a couple of hours.
Yeah, I mean, if you need $10 million and you're selling 10 million gallons of water per quarter, then all you need is to charge $1 per gallon.
Well, no, that's not the way it works. It's all more complicated than that, because
why is it?
At higher consumption levels, you want to encourage conservation, but you want to encourage conservation by all your customers, commercial as well as residential, and the new rates don't even do that for commercial. So, what you would end up with, the situation is the largest customers, who are almost all commercial customers, they should pay a higher proportion of the total water bills than residential customers, because residential customers, over 90% of them consume water in the 0 to 25,000 gallon range. 90% of the consumption by commercial customers is up over 60,000 gallons, 50 or 60,000 gallons of water. So because the rates are increasing at the higher levels, they should be paying a higher percentage of the water bills than the amount of water that they're consuming.
Okay.
All right. So that's another reason why these rates are bad. And so anyway, I don't want to belabor the point too much. It's article number 13. I'll be making a presentation at the annual town meeting. I've actually posted on ShrewsburySRT.com the presentation I gave to the Finance Committee, so people can go to ShrewsburySRT.com to see that. See the slides. I did put some of the slides that I presented there into the website page. And there's also a second follow-up where I rebutted several of the arguments that some of the Finance Committee members and the town meeting and the town manager made, trying to argue that my arguments were invalid.
One of the arguments that is constantly made is comparing Shrewsbury to neighboring towns. What neighboring towns have water rates like Shrewsbury's?
None.
None. Not
None.
Worcester, not Westboro.
No, all of their rates are. Worcester has just a single unitary rate. One, like you say, I don't remember what the number is, $5 per thousand.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's the same no matter how much you consume, and it's the same whether residential or commercial. Most of the other towns will have, again, like Shrewsbury, increasing rates at the higher consumption levels. Yeah. But none of them, all of them have residential rates that are equal to commercial rates. None of them have higher. A few of them actually have lower residential rates than commercial rates. So again, why does Shrewsbury need to be so different? The selectmen have never, I brought this up several times, they've never answered that question. The town manager has never answered that question. It's like, we don't have to answer that question. As you said earlier, just go away and don't question us. We're right.
We're smarter than you are. It's our government. Shut up and go away.
Yeah, exactly. It's really ridiculous. Now, what's even worse, however, like I said, people can go to the Shrewsbury SRT website and get more information on this. I do want to bring up one other thing. So now I've sent out a couple of letters to the local newspapers, and I sent one to the Community Advocate, and I got a note back saying, well, gee, and I'll read it, quote it, "We will not be publishing your letter on water rates. We have previously published your position on this matter. If you wish to pursue this further, I suggest you take it up with the selectman or town manager." Well, they already know that I've already taken it up with the selectman and the town manager, and they're not interested. But the more important point here is that they have never published my position on this matter. You go back to October of 2016, right after the special town meeting when I last brought up this article. The Community Advocate had a long article about this, and they completely misrepresented several facts that I had presented, at the special town meeting. So I wrote them a letter, and I explained that to them, and they gave me the hardest time in the world. And that letter did not outline my position. It just simply pointed out several factual errors that were made about what I said. Well, they gave me a hard time back then, but now the publisher there is telling me that, oh, they've already published my position. Yeah. It's nonsense. What they really are doing here is they don't want to publish my letter because I suspect it could be that they don't want any controversial local news in their newspaper because that would upset people. And they don't want to upset powerful local politicians like our selectmen. Yeah. You know, we have a close working relationship with those guys, and we get articles from them which we don't have to do anything with. We just take whatever they send us and we publish it, and it's gospel, you know.
And basically reporting by local reporters consists of picking up a press release from the town manager's office, adding a couple of quotes from the town manager or the selectman to sort of freshen it up, and then sticking it on a page in their newspaper. I mean, that's about it.
Yeah, yeah, that's about the size of it.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping, I'll be sending some other communications out over the next couple of weeks. You know, the annual town meeting is May 21st, and it's Article 13. I have a feeling it might not get on the agenda until either very late Monday night by design, so that most people won't be watching, or not until the next day's session.
Sure, that's another thing. You drag out the discussion of the town budget until like all the stuff that you want to fail comes at the last 5 minutes, like 2 minutes before 10 o'clock, and everybody's tired and irritable.
And people are in a hurry to go, and so they start wanting to move the question and everything.
It's our government, shut up and go away.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's all choreographed.
Yes, it's a pretend democracy. We still have, though, the 3 more warrant articles to wade through. Article 14 is another petition article, and this one was to ban the use of polystyrene trays, dishes, containers in restaurants and schools. And there's the April 19th meeting of the Finance Committee. They decided that they would not make a recommendation.
They were going to make a recommendation at town meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, and to me, I was there. I stayed to listen to it after I gave my presentation on Article 13. Yeah. And I listened to the entire discussion, and frankly, I was not impressed. No. They put out a lot of information that, again, is somewhat misleading. To say, yes, if you burn, one of the things they said is, well, if you burn styrofoam, if you burn it, if you bring it up to a temperature where it starts to decompose or burn it, it'll give off toxic gases. Well, gee, duh, yeah, that's true of any plastic. That's even true of wood. You burn wood, wood does give off some toxic, there's some toxic.
Carbon monoxide, it gives off
exactly.
creosote.
Anything you burn is going to tend to be toxic, some more toxic than others, but the point is you're not supposed to be taking styrofoam and putting hot food in it that's so hot that it's going to cause it to melt the styrofoam. Yeah. So that was ridiculous. The second thing they said is, well, styrofoam is, it's litter. It's out there in litter, and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, but if you get rid of the styrofoam, you're going to have to replace it with something. And if people continue to use the same bad habits of tossing their stuff out into, on the highways and stuff, you're still going to have litter. It's just going to be a different kind of litter. Yeah.
So maybe a slightly more biodegradable litter, but litter. And another one was that it was it was basically not a renewable resource. You're basically processing petroleum, and so it was sort of a waste of resources. And
well, everything. I mean, if they replace it with paper cups for for hot coffee, okay. What are the chances that coffee cup is going to get, be recycled?
Yes.
Okay. Now, will it degrade? Sure, it'll degrade. Yeah. But
I don't know. I think it follows on the plastic bag ban, and it is a solution to it. In the case of plastic bags, you could see plastic bags draped on trees all over town and brush and stuff, and they didn't degrade, so they were sort of an eyesore, and I could understand that. But in this case, I don't see polystyrene as quite the threat. But
Yeah.
anyway, so by the way, there's going to be a hearing on polystyrene in the schools May 9th, which is tonight while we're taping. Article 15 is an article to have electronic voting at town meeting, and
Not to have electronic voting, to do a study, to have
To
an
do- yeah.
electronic voting study
That's
committee
right.
get together and do that.
Yes, and this was controversial because God forbid that we should allow the peasants to know what's actually going on.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, and that's the important thing. I mean,
We don't want a record of how town meeting members are voting, because then you might actually make an informed decision at the ballot box.
when you're voting for town meeting members, wouldn't you like to know that
Yeah.
how they voted and whether they voted?
To raise your taxes 65 years in a row every single time, you know?
Or
But
more importantly, how they voted on the marijuana issue.
yeah, you know, so anything that interests you. Right now, there's no record of how your
Yeah.
town meeting rep voted.
Well, they would say, well, you know, when the vote is being taken, if it's a standing vote,
You can see that.
well, then they scan
Scan
the
the
crowd,
audience.
and maybe you'll see.
Maybe.
Maybe you'll see some of your town meeting members. But will you know who all of them were? No, because they're all over the place. They don't
Yeah,
sit in separate sections.
Yeah, and the
by
other,
precinct.
another problem with that is that suppose you moved here yesterday from Westboro or South Carolina or whatever, India. You don't know, you don't know who these people are.
You don't know how they voted.
You don't know how they voted.
Last
There's
month,
no
last
record,
year.
you know.
Yep.
But anyway, the complaint was, well, it's cumbersome. It would involve expense, and it would need lots of cumbersome equipment.
They're talking about spending like 25. One of the options would be like they've done some preliminary studies around maybe $25,000 initially, and then a couple of $1,000s a year.
Yeah.
Which seems to me a very small price to pay to improve democratic procedures in the town. However, the thing about this study committee is it's saying that there's like 3 or 4 people going to, that have specifically been selected to be on this committee. Well, what if they don't want to be on the committee? Can you make these people, can you make the town moderator participate in the committee? Can you make the town clerk participate? I mean,
I don't know. My feeling is that this should be like non-controversial, because it's just a study committee. We're not
Right.
committing to anything.
Right.
So
Right.
I mean, we shouldn't even be discussing.
as long as people who have been specified as being on the committee agree to be on the committee, or a substitute can be identified, fine. Let's do the study. I mean,
the world isn't going to end just to look into this.
Right.
So
Right.
this is much ado about nothing. And the final petition article that is on the warrant is Article 16, which is the ban on fluoridation, which has been, I think it's been on there before, at least once.
It's been on there at least once. At least
once that I can remember.
And we went through the whole process, and there was a lot of statistics brought up about which turned out to be, here's the thing, is you have like the Centers for Disease Control and the National Health Service and There's been hundreds, if not thousands, of studies done on the effects of fluoride, what the appropriate levels of fluoride are in the water are, what can happen if there's too much fluoride. 99.9% of the studies have said, at the appropriate level, fluoride is beneficial. Fluoride in the water is beneficial for the population. Okay. The proponents of this article, the last time around, came out and found a couple of articles that said, a couple of studies that said, well, blah blah. Well, it turns out that there are problems with it. Of course, those studies looked at the fluoride in the water at elevated levels, higher than what the federal government recommends.
Yeah, there are places in the United States where there are natural deposits of fluoride in underground, in aquifers, so it sort of leaches into the water, and it's there whether you want it or not.
Yeah, and in those situations, it can, and the high concentrations like that, it can be harmful to infants. And in older people, it can actually cause mottling of teeth and stuff like that. But again, if you're adding fluoride because there isn't any fluoride in the water, you can closely regulate how much of that fluoride is in the water, the concentration, and therefore those are not problems. Yeah. So again,
another thing though that this raises is that there's a lot of stuff that goes into our water that we don't even discuss when fluoridation comes up, which is like chlorine is added in addition to the fluoride. Also, I think we have sodium hydroxide added to it to knock down the pH, because at high pH your plumbing is being chewed up by the water. And of course, we recently approved a treatment plant to get rid of some of the manganese that's in there. And
hopefully gets rid of some of the other particulate matter that came up with when people were having all those problems with contamination.
Yeah, I'll get to that in just a second.
And by the way, there's still, someone just emailed me the other day telling me that they still occasionally get, black stuff or granular stuff coming out of their faucets.
Yes, I will not mention the person with whom I spoke, but like I think it was about a year ago, they were either flushing the system or I think last year there was like a drought and the water table was very low, and they were basically pumping the bottom of the barrel, as it were. And the problem was that at this particular location, when the shower was turned on, the person trying to take a shower ended up taking a shower in mud. Actual mud came out of the shower.
But to go back to your point about when they had the drought, I think it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And they were pumping sort of bottom of the barrel when you think about a well. Well, again, they wouldn't have had to pump that far down into the barrel if they had been addressing over the last 20 years the whole problem with unaccounted water. Because if we didn't have 35% unaccounted water, okay, you wouldn't be pumping anywhere near the amount of water that they had to pump when we had the drought.
Yes, even at
so that's another example of poor management by who? The selectmen, who are the town's water commissioners.
Yes, that's another point that they, at the finance committee meetings, I think of April 19th, the town manager admitted that they still didn't know what was causing the unaccounted for water. They didn't think that it was caused by a leak in the system. They thought it was more likely due to data gathering and bad water meters or something like that was happening. Which is why we're switching over to monthly billing to try to catch.
Well, and plus most people don't know this, but back in January and February of this year, they went and did a study. They went and reviewed all the water meters in town to see when they were installed, whether they needed to be reinstalled, whether there were problems with it. And they should have done that long before they started doing the rate study.
Yes. Okay, we have to wrap it up. Thank you for watching, and we will be back next month. And till then, best of luck at town meeting.